Hello, I'm Roy. Welcome to the latest installment of my YouTube channel, Roy's Book Reviews. I've done about a dozen of these so far. Not sure if I'm quite getting the hang of it yet, but nevertheless, I persist because it's a promise I made to myself. Today, I'm going to discuss the novel Pym by Matt Johnson. I've read several of Matt Johnson's novels to date and have enjoyed each of them. Um, he is a very entertaining writer, a very humorous writer, and he also happens to be on Twitter. I follow him there, and if you're also on Twitter, I highly suggest following him, even if you don't necessarily follow authors because you're not all that interested in news about books and publishing, writing, um, teaching of writing, things of that nature that are his areas of expertise. He's just a very funny person in general, and has a lot of funny quips to make about a variety of topics. So I do recommend following him on social media. For those of you who enjoy reading books that are comedic, I highly suggest Johnson's novels, including this book, Pym, that I'm about to talk about. I think that writing funny is one of the greatest challenge that an author can take on. It's difficult to be funny in general, I believe. It's particularly to be difficult on the written page. I mean, maybe you can write a funny line or put together a funny scene, but to make people smile or even laugh out loud consistently over the course of a few hundred pages is something that not a lot of writers can do, at least not a lot of writers that I have read to date. Matt Johnson is one of the authors who has that talent. So if you want a good chuckle with your reading, I suggest any one of Matt Johnson's books. Pym is an interesting one that makes for a quick read. It is filled with Matt Johnson's trademark humor, regardless of the seriousness of topic at hand. The plot of Pym revolves around a recently fired African American literature professor. Why was he fired? Because his primary focus was on examining a novel by Edgar Allan Poe, the only full-length novel written by the brilliant but definitely not African American author. The name of the book is the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. I had never heard of Poe's lone novel before reading Johnson's Pym. So I Googled it, and sure enough, it is a real book. The narrator of Pym studies and teaches this book to his detriment because he believes it holds the key to understanding white-black race relations. White-black race relations is something that Matt Johnson writes about a lot. He happens to be biracial, so I'm assuming he has seen white-black race relations up close and personal, making him a bit of an expert on it. And it is a subject matter that he returns to time and time again in his novels. I also write about race relations a lot, even though I am not the product of a interracial parentage. I guess I have my own separate reasons for finding the subject matter interesting. And you probably find it interesting as well, unless you don't. But whether you do or don't, I think you'll enjoy the books of Matt Johnson because that is just one of many aspects to his storytelling. So anyway, after being fired, the professor and his also unemployed best friend, who has his own obsession with a painter of landscapes, specifically, he wants to find the precise physical vantage point that each of the artist's paintings are based on. These two men, the cousins, end up on a quest that takes them along. I mean, they're not cousins, they're friends, but the narrator's cousin and also the narrator's ex-girlfriend and her current husband all end up going along with some other people to Antarctica of all places. It is on this frozen terrain that they discover a lost race of creatures um, that represent whiteness, basically. This means, or what the narrator figures out it must mean, is that the opposite of these creatures and the opposite of this place must exist. A tropical island representing blackness that Poe also wrote about in his novel. At least he hopes it could be out there. But when the world as we know it seemingly comes to an end, they're out on their expedition, and I guess World War III breaks out, and all of a sudden they're like the only people in the world, the ones that are going off to Antarctica. The narrator and his motley crew, perhaps being the lone survivors of Armageddon, end up being enslaved by the primitive creatures who live in Antarctica. So they are the only people alive in the world, and they are prisoners to these creatures representing whiteness, which doesn't sound funny, but somehow Matt Johnson makes it pretty amusing. So where was I? I'm reading from the words of my review, written at Goodreads. The search is on for whatever paradise, whether it's man-made or otherwise, may still exist after they are able to escape from these creatures, which is no easy feat. But they do manage eventually to escape and to take off, hoping to find land that is the opposite of the one that they were imprisoned on. That's about as well as I can describe Pym's quirky plot. It's best to read this enjoyable book for yourself, to see if you find it as entertaining as I did, rather than taking my word for it. It is not the favorite of Matt Johnson books that I've read, but it is definitely a very unique story, different from anything else that I've read by any other author, including other books by Matt Johnson. I like the fact that, it touches on the life of Edgar Allan Poe and the writings of Edgar Allan Poe. Of course, I am an Edgar Allan Poe fan and find his life, his biography, pretty interesting. So if you are interested in Edgar Allan Poe, or if you're interested in race relations, or if you're just up for a good laugh, I do suggest picking up this book, Pym, by Matt Johnson, checking it out. And like I said before, you may also want to follow him on Twitter or wherever else on social media he may happen to be, and see for yourself if he amuses you as much as he amuses me. So that's all I have to say for now. I will see you next time. I don't know if I'll be wearing a hat in that video because I think I have run out of my supply of them. So unless I buy some new hats between now and the next video, this may be the last one. So I'll have to come up with something different to be a backdrop visual for these videos. See you soon. Happy reading. Goodbye.